The first reason we can be sure that Jesus rose from the dead is that the tomb was empty. And I just want to say something about the empty tomb. It's a historical fact. There is no way that the Christian faith would have spread the way it did if the body of Jesus had still been in the tomb. There is no way that could have happened. If everyone knew that the body of Jesus was in there, in the tomb, rotting, there's no way people would have listened to this message, because the message of the resurrection was right at the center of the Christian message. So it's a historical fact that the tomb was empty. The question is, why was it empty? People give about 5 explanations for the empty tomb. I just want to go through them. This may be a help for you if you're not very sure about the resurrection, but it's also a help for you if you already are sure, but you've got friends who are skeptics. And you say, I don't really believe this stuff. Who says that the tomb was empty because Jesus rose from the dead? Here are the 5 explanations, worth remembering these. Now I'm standing here thinking, can I remember them? Explanation 1, the Romans or the Jews took the body away. The Romans or the Jews took the body away so that the disciples couldn't move the body, so that the body of Jesus was kept safe. That's what some people say. But that won't do as an explanation. Because when the disciples started saying a few weeks later, he's alive, Jesus is Lord, he died for our sins, he rose again, all the Jews or the Romans needed to do was say, no. Here's their Jesus. This is their Jesus. He's dead and he's smelly. And they didn't do that because they couldn't do that. No, doesn't make sense to believe that the Romans or the Jews took the body away, does it? Explanation 2, the disciples stole the body. The disciples stole the body, they took the body away, and they thought, we can now convince everyone that Jesus has risen from the dead. We'll steal the body, then we'll say the tomb is empty because Jesus is risen. But that would mean that they were preaching something they knew was a lie. And even more than that, it would mean that many of them were killed because they preached this message. It would mean that they died for something that was a lie. Would you do that? I mean, there are plenty of people in human history who have died for things that aren't true. I don't know, let's talk about some of the Nazis, some of the leading Nazis in the Second World War. Some of them died, and Nazism is not true, it's not a right thing. But of course, they didn't think it was a lie. They thought it was true. But if the disciples stole the body and then said, Jesus is alive, then when they were killed for their faith, they were dying for something knowing that it was a lie. Are you getting what I'm saying here? Is that making sense? Great, thank you for those 6 people who nodded now. It doesn't make sense to say that the disciples stole the body and then told lies about it. And what were they going to get out of it? Were they going to get rich? Were they going to get successful? Were they going to be loved? So explanation 1, the Romans or the disciples took the body. The Jews took the body. Explanation 2, the disciples stole the body. Explanation 3, grave robbers stole the body. Apparently there were grave robbers in the first century, but if you were a first century grave robber, if this was your job in the first century, then you weren't interested in the body, you were only interested in the grave clothes. Because the grave clothes were one piece of material, not lots of different bits of material sewn together. This was valuable stuff. So if you were a first century grave robber, when you broke into a tomb, you left the body and you took the grave clothes. If it was grave robbers that took the body of Jesus, first of all, they chose a tomb where there was a guard on the tomb, not a sensible choice. And when they got into the tomb, they took the body and left the grave clothes. Duh. Does it make sense? It really doesn't make sense to say grave robbers took the body. Explanation 4. for the empty tomb? Well, Jesus wasn't quite dead when he was taken down from the cross. He was very nearly dead. He seemed to be dead. And they laid him in the tomb, and in the cool of the tomb, he came back to full consciousness and thought, I'm alive. I haven't died. I can convince the world that I've risen from the dead. I can convince the world that I'm the Lord. So he has a problem. He's wrapped up in these grave clothes. They were very tightly wound round the body, not with your arms outside, but with your arms inside. So he's lying there. I mean, I haven't been crucified, but I couldn't get out of something that was really tightly wrapped around me like that. But suppose he manages it. He then has to push aside a stone that healthy women were thinking, how are we going to move this stone? This is a heavy stone. He has to get past the guard. Then he has to run into, well, he can't run because he's got holes in his, nail holes in his feet, and he's lost a lot of blood. And he's got to get into a locked room and somehow convince the disciples that he's the Lord of life and death. That takes a lot of faith, much more faith than what I believe. It doesn't make sense. And the other thing to say is that the Romans pretty well invented crucifixion. They were experts. They knew their stuff. So when they said someone was dead when they'd been crucified, that person really was dead. That was explanation 4 for the empty tomb. And explanation 5 for the empty tomb, God raised him from the dead. God made the decision to bring Jesus back to life. What do you think? I think the empty tomb is very strong evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. And if Jesus rose from the dead, then it means that there is life after death. What's your answer? Why was the tomb empty?